2.3 million blocks of stone, some weighing as much as 9 tons. No cranes, no wheels turning under them, no machines, just people, and a mystery that has haunted historians for 25 centuries. Aliens, lost civilizations, 100,000 slaves under the whip. Everyone has a theory. Almost none of them survive contact with the evidence. And the real story, the one buried in bones, bread, and a 4,600-year-old logbook, is stranger and far more human than any of them. The slave story isn't folklore. It has an author. In the 5th century BC, the Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt 2,000 years after the Great Pyramid was built. His local guides told him Pharaoh Khufu forced 100,000 men to labor in shifts, 3 months at a time, for 20 years. Herodotus wrote it down. Nobody checked it again for 2,000 years. Others looked up instead of back. 70-ton granite blocks hauled with no wheeled vehicles, no iron tools, no pulleys strong enough for the job. Surely, they said, this needed help from somewhere else entirely. That theory has one real problem. It assumes ancient people weren't capable. Starting in 1988, the dig sites began proving otherwise. And it isn't just about manpower. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north within a tiny fraction of a degree, more precise than most modern buildings, without a compass. Egyptian surveyors likely used the stars to check it more than once during construction. That's applied astronomy on a national scale, 4,500 years ago. The pyramid even had an architect on record. Hemiunu, Khufu's own vizier, is credited by most Egyptologists as the man who designed it. A statue of him survives today. This wasn't an anonymous mystery. It had a name attached to the blueprint, the same way a modern skyscraper does. South of the pyramids, archaeologist Mark Lehner spent decades excavating what's now called the lost city of the pyramid builders. Bakeries, breweries, barracks, copper workshops, not a slave camp. Industrial scale infrastructure, one of the earliest institutional cities on Earth. The kitchens alone tell a story. Roughly 4,000 pounds of meat slaughtered daily, 11 cattle, dozens of sheep and goats. And these weren't old, worn-out draft animals. They were prime, young cattle, the kind most ordinary Egyptians only tasted on holidays. The workforce ate better than most of the country. In 1990, archaeologist Zahi Hawass uncovered the workers' cemetery nearby. And here's the detail that changes everything. Broken bones healed. In some cases, evidence of amputation the patient survived for years afterward. You don't set a disposable laborer's leg and nurse it for months. These were valued workers, buried with honor within sight of the monument they raised. Deep inside the Great Pyramid, in chambers sealed for 4,500 years, work crews signed their names in red paint. Friends of Khufu, drunkards of Menkaure, men proud of what they were building, never expecting anyone to read it again. Then, in 2013, French archaeologist Pierre Tallet found something that rewrote the story once more. In sea caves at Wadi al-Jarf on the Red Sea coast, he uncovered the oldest inscribed papyrus ever found anywhere on Earth, a logbook written by a real man named Merer. Merer was a mid-level official, an inspector leading a crew of 200 men. His diary, dated to Khufu's 26th year on the throne, records months of real work. Hauling fine white limestone by boat from the Tura quarries to Giza for the pyramid's outer casing. This is a construction worker's actual timesheet, 4,600 years old. Not myth, paperwork, The logbook even describes a harbor built specifically for this project, with canals cut into the Nile floodplain so boats could deliver stone almost to the foot of the pyramid. Granite for the burial chamber came from Aswan, nearly 800 kilometers upstream, some blocks weighing 80 tons apiece. Timber arrived from Lebanon. Copper tools came from mines in the Sinai. This wasn't a local project, it was a national one. To cut the stone itself, workers used copper chisels and saws, dragging wet sand through the cuts as an abrasive, since copper alone is far too soft to cut limestone or granite on its own. It's slow. It leaves tool marks archaeologists can still read today. And it works. So who actually built it? Not 100,000 slaves. Modern estimates put the core, full-time workforce at only a few thousand skilled masons and craftsmen, with a much larger rotating labor force, farmers mostly, brought in during the Nile flood season when their fields were underwater anyway and there was nothing else for them to do. Paid in bread, beer, and meat. Think national service, not slavery, and moving the blocks themselves. In 2014, physicists at the University of Amsterdam tested an old idea directly in a lab. Wetting the sand just in front of a sledge nearly halves the force needed to drag it. A wall painting from an Egyptian tomb shows a man doing exactly that, pouring water in front of a sledge hauled by 172 men. For the ramps that carried blocks up the pyramid itself, the honest answer is, we still don't fully agree. Straight ramps, zigzag ramps, and a proposed spiral ramp built into the pyramid's own core all have supporting evidence and unsolved problems. What isn't in question is the logistics behind it. That took a functioning state, a paid workforce, and a level of planning most people never associate with the ancient world. 20 years by Herodotus' own estimate, one of the only things he actually got right. No secret trick, no help from anywhere else. Just thousands of organized, fed, and cared for hands. Not gods, not aliens, not chains, farmers, bakers, and stone cutters. Backed by a state organized enough to feed 20,000 people a day and to heal them when they broke. Saying aliens built it is really just saying humans couldn't have. The bones, the bread, and a dead man's timesheet all say otherwise. 4,600 years later, it's still standing. Not because of magic, because of us. Who really built the pyramids? Ordinary people. Extraordinary result.